Since the preview build of Dandy Ace came out, I have played this game entirely too much. Obviously, with this level of playtime, I think Dandy Ace is a good game, but exactly how good of a game is it? Let's get dirty. This roguelite game is set with the themes of magic, and you play a magician named Dandy Ace, who is a handsome magician and has been trapped by Lele, the green-eyed magician, in a mirror world with a curse where you have to keep playing over and over until you can break that curse. Yes, the story is just a veneer, but we've all gotten very used to that with roguelite games. Hades was a bit of an exception, but here we are going right back to the original formula of the story is just a vehicle used to get into the gameplay. With this being a magic-based roguelite, of course your weapons are cards and magic. Cards that you will find throughout the dungeons that you play through in this game. At the start of the game, you will get 3 cards, one of each color. You're given pink cards, which are your basic attack cards, yellow cards, which are a miscellaneous or support attack, and then you get blue cards, which are your various dashes. But the weapon system is clearly where Mad Mimic, the developer of this game, wanted to innovate in the roguelite space. You get cards that you get to assign to any one of 4 different slots. Every one of those slots corresponds to one of the buttons on your controller. However, every single button also gets 2 different slots. You get a primary attack and a secondary effect. Now, the primary attack does what's on the face of the card, but at the bottom of each card you'll see that there's an additional effect that that card can take if it's allocated to another primary card. What this means is that any 2 cards can be combined to make a unique attack combination, and this creates what is probably the most creative and most innovative feature that Dandy Ace has brought to the table. With dozens of different types of cards, there are literally hundreds of different combination possibilities here. I found this to be a really great feature that had me reaching into my own creativity and mixing and matching and trying different combinations of cards to see what worked best in various situations. While the vast majority of the weapons are locked at the beginning of the game, you can find blueprints, much like in Dead Cells, where you can unlock these weapons and they will start to show up randomly throughout the game. To unlock the weapon from the blueprints, you have to accumulate blue gems that you get for killing enemies in the game. When you've completed a level, you end up at an oasis. Here, you can recharge your health and then unlock blueprints at a merchant that's available there. You can also invest in some limited permanent upgrades for your character. Finally, you can also allocate trinkets while you're at the oasis, and trinkets are found much like blueprints and unlocked in the same way. Trinkets work as kind of a boon, which you're able to allocate 3, 1 per level that you beat, and they'll help you through the game. These give you various defense benefits, various attack benefits, and if this all sounds like Dead Cells, that's because it's exactly like Dead Cells. A second opportunity to permanently upgrade your character comes after each boss, in the form of the Niftar Merchant. This rugged magical bunny can increase the levels of the cards that you find in all of the various different ways throughout the dungeon, and is very helpful. Again, Dead Cells. Each level consists of a number of doors and gates that you can pass through to find a path to get to another mirror that'll lead to another chamber. Now, as you play the game, you will permanently unlock different colored keys that will allow you to go down branching paths. If you go down those branching paths behind the colored doors, you will find yourself at different bosses. Again, Dead Cells. This is where my first major criticism of Dandy Ace is, and that's with the environments and the aesthetic overall. While I do like this whole magical magician aesthetic, it has grown on me quite a bit, but I found that the levels look very similar from one level to the next. The designers of this game did go out of their way to make different level structures. There's a garden level and a haunted-like level, and there's the generic Dandy Ace magical level, but they're not different enough for the player to think that they're in some different location. And in the end, this is something that for some players is going to make the level design and aesthetic wear out its welcome long before the game mechanics do. Once you finish 2 or 3 levels, you'll find yourself at a boss fight. The bosses in Dandy Ace execute much to the expectation of roguelite players these days. They are bigger than life, have huge attacks, but more importantly, have very patterned attacks that you have to learn. While you can grind your way into making these fights a little bit easier, you will not be able to just tank your way through them. You are going to have to learn. While the game does provide branching paths that lead to different bosses, I have only seen 4 bosses in this game. However, there are 2 gates that I have yet to unlock, and I'm expecting there to be additional bosses behind those gates. The interesting thing here is that this game has 4 different playthroughs, of which I have completed 2 of them, and I'm still missing 2 keys. One of my biggest criticisms for this game, though, is also regarding the bosses, and unfortunately it is the final boss. Game players have gotten used to this idea that we earn our way to a final boss, and when we get there, we expect a spectacle. We want the moment to reflect the gravity of our entire journey. And with Dandy Ace, the final boss, unfortunately, looks very similar to the way that you have seen him all the way through the game. While this may change in the 4th and final run of the game, I have been through this game 2 times on 2 different difficulties, and I have to say the boss both times has been very underwhelming. That isn't to say, though, that the boss and the game aren't difficult. While it's true that the average player's first run through the game is likely to only last somewhere around 5 hours and probably be somewhere around 5 to 10 runs, the game gets drastically harder on the next difficulty, and this game's going to ask that you play it 4 separate times, each time with an increasing difficulty. And I have to say, the second playthrough was much more difficult than the first. In fact, this has one of my concerns, but not necessarily a criticisms of the game. After you've completed the first playthrough, the game gets more difficult in various different ways. You're given less opportunities to heal your character, the enemies hit harder, there are traps that are added to all of the boss fights, and harder enemies are added to the beginning of the game. Additionally, you end up seeing brand new enemies on subsequent playthroughs that make the game even more difficult. Extrapolating what I've seen from the first playthrough to the second playthrough makes me think that this may be a crushingly difficult game by the end of the 4th playthrough. And I'd also like to warn new players of this game not to be deceived by the ease of the first playthrough. My estimation of the length of this game is sure if you are a speedrunner of Hades and Dead Cells and you like to mainline ghost peppers, this may be a 10-hour game for you. But for mere mortals playing this game, I think this is a minimum of 20 hours and maybe even higher if you need to spend more time grinding. Dandy Ace has done what a lot of indie games are not brave enough to do, and that's to innovate within the roguelite space. The attack system that they've brought into this game is very creative and will draw in a lot of new players. For a lot of their other roguelite mechanics, though, they've simply borrowed from big titles like Dead Cells. And while I'm sure just looking at this game you'd want to make the comparison to Hades, I'd say you should hesitate in doing that. In fact, I've gone out of my way to create an entire video of how people are calling this a clone of Hades, and these 2 games play very little alike. Check out that video right here. Overall, I endorse this game. I think that if you're a roguelite player, you're definitely going to like this, and I think that you're probably going to love it. If you can find it on PC or the console of your choice, they've said the price is going to be $20 or less. I think that's right in line with my expectations of this game. Thanks for hanging out with me, and until next time, this has been Pixel.